But poor Michael's history was not finished yet. A heavy-looking elderly man, who had as little possible the air of one desirous of seeking an adventure, was in the act of examining some sheep in a field, the fence of which was not 50 yards from the rocky ledge from whence the boy had sprung. Having completed his survey, and directed 2 men who were with him to select a score or 2 from the lot, the old man reposed himself upon a stile in the fence above mentioned, and having chanced to turn his head from the sheep towards the spot where Michael stood, had watched for a minute or 2 the boy's agitated movements and demeanour, but without the slightest suspicion of the frightful catastrophe that was to ensue. No sooner, however, did he hear the splash occasioned by the plunge, than he sprang over the stile with the activity of a younger man, and calling to the others to follow him, made his way with little loss of time to a bit of pebbly ground on level with the stream, and at no great distance from the point at which Michael had sunk. But short as the time had been, the ripple had already disappeared from the surface of the water, and no trace remained of the object of his search. The 2 young men whom he had summoned to follow him, though they had not seen the accident, had gathered from his words that something terrible had occurred, and clambered down the rocky cliff, were by his side in a moment. "It's too late, lads!" exclaimed the old man, wringing his hands together. "I saw the poor distracted creature take the leap, but he was sunk before I got to the bank, and I shall take it he will never rise again. I shall never forgive myself for not going to him when I saw him throwing his arms about in that wild way. I might have guessed what was going to happen, and may heaven forgive me for not preventing it." "'Tis a man who has thrown himself in?" inquired one of the men. "Not a man, but a fine young lad as ever you see. Poor fellow! 'Twas early days for him to have found sorrow enough to throw himself out of life that way. If I had ran to him, as I ought to have done, and stopped the deed, who knows, we might have brought him round to a better manner of thinking." "'Tis 10 to 1 but he'll come to the top again yet, if he hasn't done it already," said the man. "But if he comes, he'll come dead, William," replied the old man. "I don't know that," rejoined the young shepherd. "The stream runs briskish round yon corner, and would carry him right away with it, but it's worth while having a look lower down. If he rises at all, 'twill be there." And so saying, the young man set off at a swifter pace than his master could follow him, while the old man and the other shepherd lad continued for a minute or 2 to watch the place where he had fallen. "Halloo! Halloo! Halloo!" cried the voice at no great distance. "That's William, by all that's good!" exclaimed the young shepherd. And without waiting for his companion's reply, he ran off at full speed, the old man following with no lagging step, and at a distance of a few yards, after turning the corner formed by another huge mass of sandstone rock, they perceived William, breast deep in the water, and grasping, at the utmost extent of his arm, a limb of the drowning boy. Before the old Westmoreland statesman, for such he was, could overtake his young companions, the hero of our tale was lying high and dry upon the bank, but whether life was quite extinct or still lingered in the cold, corse-like form before them was a question which, when the old man joined the group, the young ones were not able to answer. Luckily for Michael, the old statesman had seen a man saved from drowning some 30 years before, and he remembered enough of the process that he had witnessed to enable him to give some very useful instructions on the present occasion. They managed to make their patient discharge from his mouth some portion of the superfluous draught he had swallowed, and after bestowing patient and assiduous friction on his breast and limbs, they had the great satisfaction of seeing the chest heave with returning respiration, and all other symptoms of vivification followed in their proper order, till the eyes of Michael were once more widely opened, and fixed with perplexity, and something like terror on the faces which were bending over him. "Thanks heaven!" ejaculated the old man earnestly. "He's safe now, at least from drowning. I have not got that to answer for that. But he isn't in a trim to be left, my lads. He would have been as well in the river, perhaps, as out of it, if we do not do more for him." Then, causing Michael to sit, and examining his features with a glance of very friendly curiosity, he said, "You don't look like a bad boy, my poor fellow. What could have set you upon such doing a desperate action?" The effort which the poor boy made to answer was ineffectual, and he only shook his head. "I suppose it's over soon as yet to expect any information from him," resumed the old man. "So there's nothing to be done, as I see, but just to carry him up between us, if he cannot walk, to the Nag's Head, and have him laid upon my bed there, till he is in a condition to tell us something about himself. Can you feel your legs yet, my boy?" he continued, endeavouring by the help of his man William to make him stand up. But Mchl had no powers to second their efforts. The two lads, therefore, raised him head and heels, and, preceded by the grey-haired farmer, bore him between them above a mile to the humble hostelry of the Nag's Head. The procession was too remarkable a one to escape notice, and before it reached the shelter of the little inn a miscellaneous crowd of men, women, and children had joined it. Many of these had been familiar with the features of poor Mchl in days of yore, but not one of them recognized the widow Armstrong's boy in the long-limbed, pallid figure they now gazed upon. Muster Thornton, the Westmoreland yeoman and farmer, was too substantial a customer to be refused any reasonable favour, and the ragged, dripping Mchl was not only permitted to lie down on Muster Thornton's best of beds, but accommodated promptly with dry linen, and duly comforted with more hot brandy, water, sugar, biscuits, than he had any inclination to swallow. He took enough, however, to remove the faintness of inanition, and this, together with dry linen and a bed, sufficed, in spite of the heavy sorrows upon which his mind had not yet dared fix itself, to soothe him into a long and healing sleep. When he awoke from it, he was capable of answering all the questions Mr. Thornton put to him, and this he did with a simplicity of pathos that went straight to the good man's heart. That he had been working in a distant cotton factory, where he had been very hardly treated, and having gotten away to see his mother and his brother and found them both dead, was a tale that, if it could not excuse the desperate act which he had attempted, at least accounted for it in a manner that left as much to pity as to blame. Poor boy!" exclaimed the old man with tears in his eyes. "It was wrong and wicked, very wrong and wicked. But you must pray God to forgive you, my boy, and never think of such desperate doings more." "I do not know what I was about, if I rightly remember," said Mchl. "My head seemed gone. I don't know how I got to the river, but I am sure I did not go there on purpose." "So much the better. I am glad to hear it. And it's no great wonder, sure enough, if you did lose your head, coming to such a home as that. But what are you to do next, my poor fellow? I suppose there is no other home for you, is there?" "I have no home, nor a single friend in the whole world," replied Mchl. "And the only work you have ever been used to, I suppose, is following the wheels in the factory?" said the farmer. "Except for 3 months and a bit when I was kept a cleaning the outhouses and the yards and wheeling away garden rubbish and such like," replied Mchl. "Well, but that's better than nothing, boy. At any rate, you know how to hold a spade, which is a long deal better than having never used your fingers, except for tying bits of thread. Do you think you should be willing to work for me, my boy, and tend my farmyard stock, and do a turn of work in the fields when it was wanted?" "I should be willing, sir," replied Mchl, while a flush passed over his pale face. "I should be willing and most thankful to work for you." "That's well," said the old man cheerily. "As to terms, I don't expect we shall find much difficulty. You will come to me, my poor fellow, much in the same condition as you first come into the world. Therefore, all that you want, I must find which will be as much as I can afford to give, I take it, just at first, till you and I too find out what you're good for. Will you agree to it, my lad, and give me your time and best endeavours for clothes, food, lodgings, and goodwill?" "It will be a blessed bargain for me, sir," said Mchl, "if you will add to all your goodness the excusing my ignorance. But if will was all that you wanted to make a good servant, you should not lose me by it. You should not lose by me." "And will is all that is wanting, boy. You are no fool, I take it, by your looks, and if you will mind what is said, and do your best, I shall ask no more. What is your name, my good fellow?" "Mchl Armstrong, sir." "Well then, Mchl Armstrong, I am your master, and you are my man. And now you must eat, and then you must go to sleep again, I think, till I have got some decent clothes for you. Those you wore yesterday have had a good washing, to be sure. None the less, I don't justly like the looks of them."